So thank you so much for coming. For those that weren't at the Crab Farm Winery 4 weeks ago, my name's Louise Parsons and I'm a resident out here. I live in Whirinaki, which I did get schooled on Facebook for the way I pronounced it. And I have to say, Whirinaki sounds way more beautiful than Whirinaki, as I pronounced it, so I do apologise if I caused offence. The purpose today is follow-up. So, 4 weeks ago we were all very, very distraught and vulnerable, and we still are. So we called a meeting 2 weeks into the cyclone to say what's going on with this looting, the crime, etc. And we asked people that could really influence change to be there, which these people are the ones that are influencers, because Stuart Nash is our local MP, plus he was the Minister of Police. Mitch, we'll talk about that. It's not going to be an elephant in the room. Yeah, I've got a few things I'd like to say about that. We've got, I was going to say Mark Mitchell, because everyone calls him Mitch. And he's obviously with National, so he is the police spokesperson. Yep. And at Nicole McKee, who is, she's the justice spokesperson plus gun reform. So that's kind of a bit topical with us out in the WAPs at the moment. We'd also like to just acknowledge that Kirsten Wise is here, the Mayor of Napier. We did have an apology from Sandra Hazelhurst some time ago because she knew she wasn't going to be around this weekend. She was sending Tanya Kerr, who sent her apologies in today, sadly. And Martin Langford, if you want to say, this is Martin. So he's the Democracy New Zealand candidate for Napier. Thank you for coming. Is there anyone else? Is Katie here? Yeah. Oh, where's Katie? Oh, sorry, Katie. Oh, you're just little. Sorry, Katie Nimmin is here, who is the Napier candidate for National as well. Okay, so that was the purpose of the meeting, is for these guys that bravely came the first time to listen to us, and they did listen respectfully, which is what I expect again today from our lovely audience, is that we have lots of respect so that we can move this thing forward. Because crime's not going away, and neither are we. So we're going to keep pushing this. And so it's their chance to say what they've done. And we have seen changes, haven't we? Now, I do have to point out the people that aren't here. And the people that aren't here are our Minister for Police, our new Minister for Police. Now, sadly, we lost Stuart for a stupid reason, because he said what probably a lot of us were thinking. Let's get tough on crime, and lost his job for it, which, But he's still fronted today, so we've got to give him kudos for that. And he's our man that is going to be pushing the new Minister of Police on our behalf to make sure that the things that we're demanding get followed through. And while she declined coming because she deemed it to be political, I don't know if Chris Hipkins put it in her job description that she's actually a politician. So he may need to just review that. I'm in recruitment, I can maybe help with that. So, a little bit shocked that she decided to decline. But what shocked me further is that she said there has been no spike in crime throughout this process. So I think Stuart's going to be able to help us a little bit with that, and absolutely floored me. So, we are reporting crime, and I'm going to be hell-bent on getting those statistics and the cases that have been reported so that I can double-check with what I'm hearing, because there's some major cover-up happening if they think there hasn't been a spike in crime. And so we're here to make sure that they listen to us, because what's going to happen next is we're going to be in recovery phase. And what happens when you're in recovery phase? There's a whole bunch of tradies going into our areas with a whole bunch of new stuff. And so there's going to be a whole bunch of more bottom feeders in there taking that stuff. So we need to make sure that they think about that before they start retreating the police. Now, kudos to New Zealand Police. I'm not happy that the leaders aren't here and they refuse to come because it's political. What they need to understand is that it's the politicians that make the laws, and they're the ones that give the police the powers. So of course it's going to be political. But it's also about our community, and it's about the community being heard and listened to and valued, and by not fronting shows what they think. And that we do pay them. We do pay them. Not the people doing the crimes, I don't think, but yeah, the rest of us do. So it's disappointing that they're not here, but we do have to acknowledge, we had that meeting 4 weeks ago, and I know you took bunches and bunches of notes, and the next day we had police caravans deployed in Puketapu and here. So we've got to say thank you for that, because it has made us feel safer. There's also been a huge police presence. Our beef is not with the police. They can only do what they can do with the resources that they've got. And if people are saying that there's no spike in crime, I call it the revolving door of the justice system, catch and release, catch and release. So it must be so annoying for the good police of New Zealand that are doing this, and then they're getting let down by their leaders so that they can't do their job properly. So I won't say too much more, because I'm going to say a little bit at the end, but just so that you know how this is going to run today. So I've done my little bit. I think I've introduced everyone. I've told you about the toilets. I'm not going to say in case of emergency, because I think we've got that, we've got that. But what we'll do is we'll let you guys speak, and that's in response to what you heard from our previous meeting, okay? And then you guys can do some questions and answers. They will be questions, not statements. So we'll make sure that they are questions, please, because we've got a panel here that is willing to answer those questions. And then we're just going to do a little bit of an update with, Stuart's going to give us an update on the recovery, just to give you some timelines and the process and stuff, so that'll be great. And we're also going to just give you an update about Unison, roading, and the last thing is we just want to mention the funding for businesses that has been, I know Chamber of Commerce are dealing with that, and well, I don't know how they're dealing with that, but we probably need to just raise that just for a second, and then we'll just close off by saying what our future demands are. Because I'm on the tally again tomorrow, so I'd like to share that. Okay, so who wants to go first?
So Lou, thank you very much for organising the first meeting. Thank you everyone for turning up to the first and the second. Couple of things I'd say. First of all, even though I'm not the Minister of Police now, I was Minister of Police for 3 years, so I know a little bit about how this works. Politicians cannot tell police what they can do. There is a government has a strategy, we can put that in place. Commissioner can determine what he wants to do, it is he in this point in time, around implementing that strategy. But a local politician can't go to the district commander and say, I want you to do this. Having said that, politicians have to have very good relationships with their district commanders, and his or her, and in this case it's Jeanette Park, so has to have a very good relationship with the community. Police with the consent of the population, right? It's always been the way, and police understand that. I did take a lot of notes at the last meeting, and I went back and reviewed those. And I understand the concerns that people have. And one thing I will say is that perhaps in the very early stages, police didn't quite get this right. And the reason I say that is, we all know that there are very few ways into our communities around this part of the electorate, the district. I suspect that if police had stationed the odd car or one or two cars at those T intersections, it might have given people confidence, and it might have kept people out who perhaps were coming in for the wrong reasons. I do acknowledge that. Let me say that after after the initial meeting, Jeanette Park, who's the district commander, and I will say she is a very good woman who does have the district's best interest at heart. We met, and she took me through what the police were going to do to give this community the confidence that police actually have your back. Hence the reason why she deployed resources 24/7, mobile resources 24/7 within the area. Now, I'd like to think that makes a difference. We all know that you can't have police stationed at every little roadside 24/7. I don't think anyone's asking for that. But I think what I heard you say is that you want a much greater police presence in your region, and I think that the police delivered on that. And Jeanette gave me an assurance that she would continue to place men and women out in the region, out in your community for as long as it was needed in order to give you confidence again that police had your back, but also that there was a presence there that you could go and speak to if it's necessary. And one thing I do know about community policing is you've got that 105 number. I heard what you said with regard to that. We are having issues with that, but when I say issues, just the sheer volume of people calling into that. But it's designed to free up the 111 number, which was just getting completely overloaded. But one thing I do know about community policing is if you have a presence in a community, it provides a staging post for people just to come and have a little bit of a chat, and it does provide a level of reassurance as opposed to 111 or 105. The other thing I would say is what police did at the beginning of Gabrielle is they brought 125 police from outside the district into the district in recognition that there were certain sectors of our region that had been absolutely slammed and needed a greater police presence. They upped that to 145 police, and then they brought in the Eagle helicopter. And the reason they brought in the Eagle helicopter is it provides amazing support for the men and women on the ground when they are chasing after the bad guys. So I do think that police did initially listen to what the leaders of the region required for Hawke's Bay. The other thing I will say is when I said that politicians can't tell police what to do, we can ask police if they have all the resources. When I used to meet with Andrew Costa every week and Jeanette, most days I would give a daily phone call. I'd have a daily phone call with her, and I would always ask her, have you got the resources you need to make sure that the people of Hawke's Bay are feeling safe? And her answer to that always was yes. One of the conversations I had with Andrew Costa, and I don't talk to Andrew Costa, I promise. I just asked him, have you got the resources? And he said, and that's when he said, okay, we're going to put another 25 in, which brought it up to 145 officers across the region. Now, I do believe, talking to the police men and women, and keep in mind, I'm not an expert, none of us are experts, unless some of you are former cops that have left the force in the last 2 or 3 years. The police are best placed to determine the level of resourcing necessary. Now, one thing I will say, and I'll repeat what I opened my korero with, is that I suspect in hindsight, and I can't talk on behalf of police, but knowing what I know, I suspect in hindsight they might have done things a little bit different in terms of the presence. Not their ability to turn up quickly, because every single story I heard from you 4 weeks ago, said that when we called the police turned up. So what I heard from you is that the police were really responsive, but what I also heard from you, that the police proactive presence wasn't what you considered necessary in order to provide you with the confidence in a time of great stress. Hence the reason why policing was diverted to provide a presence and provide you with the confidence that I hope you needed and now have, that police absolutely does have your back. Don't think there's anything else I'd say at this point. I will talk, I am still the lead minister for cyclone recovery across the region, but I'm happy to talk about that a little bit later and can also talk about those business loans as well.
Could you maybe just mention about moving forward if there was another natural disaster? Have you looked into what, deploying army? You think, I know that you're not the Minister of Police anymore, but
I can talk about it.
Yeah.
So what will happen is there will be the police always do a review of this sort of thing, and they will have a look and they will determine whether they deployed the right number of resources in the right places to meet their key objectives. And their key objectives, first and foremost, is to keep people safe and give them confidence again that police has their back and that they're sorting everything out. So there will be a review done of that, I have no doubt. When that's going to happen, I can't tell you. I'm not privy to that, but it will occur. Every incident that I've been involved in, keep in mind, I was Minister of Police on March the 15th. I was Minister of Police for Whakaari White Island. I was Minister of Police at the beginning of COVID when we were trying to figure out the police's role in keeping people, keeping our communities locked down and a lot of the stuff that was going on. And also I was Minister of Police for the beginning of this cyclone. In the sort of 3 years plus 1 month that I was Minister of Police, there are a number of unique events that police had to respond to in a way that required a unique response. What I can say to that, Lou, is, in case you didn't hear, Lou asked, would the police do anything differently than they've done? I suspect the report will say they would have probably done things differently, and I suspect what it will say is, given a similar incident in another part, or heaven forbid back here again, but in another part of the country, this is what we will do, this is what we would do, or these are the resources we'll put in place, or these are the strategies that we would take in order to ensure that the communities that have been really smashed and are really fragile, and keeping in mind we had no comms and we had no power, and so that created its own issues in terms of getting information out there. I suspect they would do something slightly differently. What I can't stand up and say is that this is what police would do differently next time this happened, because again, I don't have the ability to do that, but nor have I seen any review recommendations that have come out of their initial response. But they are always looking at ways to do things better. And one thing I will say, and I'll reiterate your point, Lou, I have been very close to the police for a number of years, and I think by and large they do a fantastic job keeping us safe 24/7, but they are always looking at ways to do things better. Hence the reason I suspect out of any review of this, there will be tweaks to how they would manage a similar event in going forward in the future. Thank you.
That is working, eh? 1, 2, is that working?
Yep.
We'll save the best for last. I'll go next, Nicole. Afternoon, everyone. My name's Mark Mitchell, National Party MP. My electorate is Whangaparā up north, so just north of Auckland. It's the Hibiscus Coast, Orewa, if anyone sort of knows that area. Yes, I am a Jaffa. I apologise for that. But I do have strong links to the area and have done for a long time. I started my life shepherding up on Ngāmatea Station, and you had two choices. You could either go to Taihape or you come to Napier. And there's not really a choice there, is there? So all the shepherds used to pile into Napier. I then was on the dog section in the Armed Defenders Squad up in Gisborne for 8 years. And the area that I covered was from Ruatoria down to Waira. I've been in Waira today, that's why we're a little bit late with Katie Neiman. We've been up there for the second time. And of course, I deployed often down here into the Hawke's Bay with your squad. So I do have strong links. Len Snee, I work very closely with him on the AOS. And of course Grant Diver, who just recently retired from the police. Both of them were your local officers that were shot, and Len was killed, obviously, in that tragic incident. So I feel like I've got strong links to the area. Just really quickly, because we are starting to look back now, and I think for the area now, you've got to be looking forward. The government has to respond very quickly. They have to be able to give you certainty, and they have to have answers, really available for you. And if we do look back just briefly from the law and order side of it, I asked Christopher Luxon when he took over as the leader of the National Party if I could have the police portfolio. And to be honest with you, I'd avoided that portfolio for about 12 years because often when you've been in the police, you can get sort of labelled as the law and order person when you go to Parliament. And I was very passionate about other things like trade and economic growth. But the reason why I asked them for the portfolio is quite simply this. I had never seen in my lifetime the levels of lawlessness that we're currently experiencing as a country. And if I look to Waira, and I used to get sent down to Waira all the time when I was a police dog handler, when the gang started to cause a bit of trouble. And we policed them hard and we kept a lid on them. And it's naive to think that we can get rid of the gangs completely, but I'll tell you what, when you've had a 50% increase over the last 5 years, then some of those hard policing skills have to come back, and you have to start showing the public that the police are controlling the streets and not the gangs. And there's been the worst gang violence. I met with the police officers up there, the local cops up there. They're dealing with some of the worst gang violence that they've ever seen in Waira with firearms. I've been down here, public meeting a few years ago now in Taradale with Stuart when he was police minister, drive-by shootings. We all know in this room that the mongrel mob have got a big presence down here. They think that they run the town. Napier has had a scourge in terms of emergency housing and those sort of issues. If you don't police them hard and you don't crack down on them, then they're just going to continue to grow in numbers. They're going to have a very permissive environment they think they operate in, and they think they can operate with impunity. And I'm sorry, Stu, I'm just going to have to say, because I don't want to get deeply political, but I am going to say this. Is that the government, when you came into government, you decided that your two priorities were going to be reduce the prison muster by 30% and repeal the 3 strikes legislation. The only bit of tough sentencing legislation we actually had on our statute books. And so what's happened is in the last 5 years, you've had a 25% reduction in the prison numbers, and at the same time, you've had a 35% increase in violent crime in this country. Those 2 numbers, make no mistake, are linked. I could roll out a whole lot of stats for you right now in terms of we are heading in the wrong direction. I did 14 public safety meetings around the country last year. If there were South Africans in the audience, they'd come up to me afterwards, and every time they'd say, we came to New Zealand and moved our family here because it was safe, and we wanted to raise our families in a safe country. New Zealand today is what it was like in South Africa 20 or 30 years ago, with ram raids, with carjackings, with police having to deal with 6 firearms incidents a day. If you don't get on top of it and you don't stop it, then it'll become normalised and it'll become entrenched. And that's why I asked for the police portfolio. Because under these guys, and Stuart, I want to acknowledge you and the work that you do, and we're actually, believe it or not, we're mates. I'm the captain of the parliamentary rugby team, so it's good to see him in his parliamentary rugby jersey shirt today. But I'm sorry, mate, in the last 5 years, under the soft on crime Labor government, we have gone backwards at a rapid rate of knots. When you guys were hit with the flood, I was asked by the media what needs to happen. I sat up in my own patch at Whangaparāoa. We got hit too. We had red stickers, we had flooding, we had people that were trapped. Nothing on the scale of what you've had to deal with and what you've been subjected to. And I acknowledge all of you because the community has responded, as always happens in New Zealand. Can I acknowledge I know that we've got police officers here today. Can I acknowledge our police officers and our first responders and the work they do? They are outstanding. What normally happens is they're so good, they step forward, they operate from here, but they plaster over all the cracks and all the problems and all the issues because that's just the nature of the work they do and how they operate. But I could see on that first day, and the media came to me and said, what needs to happen down in the Hawke's Bay in terms of a policing response? And I said, it needs to be overwhelming. You can take police out of my area. We would have happily given up 40 of our police officers, and they would have come immediately. They should have swamped the bay with police officers. They could have reinforced checkpoints with defence forces. But what needed to happen in that first 48 hours, when you've got communities that are completely cut off, no comms, no power, you're unsure of what the fatality rates are. I spoke to one of the police officers of Wairau. He was separated from his wife for 48 hours. He didn't know where she was. So you've got an extremely vulnerable community. The one thing the government's got to get right is that response in the first 48 hours. And they should have swamped the bay with police officers. They should have made people feel and know that they were safe, that they weren't going to be looted, that the gangs weren't going to turn up. We're going to go to Q&A. I'm very happy to have a debate with Stuart about that if you want to. He's sort of saying that he wants to say something. That's fine. But I'm just telling you very clearly that in my view, having been a police officer that's, yes, a long time ago, but someone that understands the coast, that knows what the issues are, that they should have responded, had a much stronger response to that first 48 hours. The central system didn't work. It broke down really quickly. If you go to Wairau and speak to the mayor and the deputy mayor, and I was at the marae again today, they completely, totally let them down. They went to a localised response. Katie and I saw that when we went up there 3 weeks ago and we were on the ground there with them. They completely shut off. They said, we just got to look after ourselves. I experienced that up in my patch as well. I got a call here. I'm heavily involved in surf lifesaving. I got a call here from the surf lifesaving operations manager saying that all of our local surf lifesavers are burnt out. They need to get back home to be with their own families. They did 150 rescues on the first night. They're getting no support. No one's listening to them from CDM. So I had to get involved with that and put as much pressure on as I could. And within 24 hours, there were fresh lifeguards arriving from Dunedin to take over. But that's not how it should work. You shouldn't have an MP that's right up north trying to deal with his own electorate, having to get involved to try and get support here. The CDM didn't work, and it's got to... I was out at Puketapu. There was a young lady there, a mum, that had basically picked up the reins and was running everything out of her house. And we went to a public meeting there. I went there with Katie. She was exhausted. She was over it. She was past it. There was no support standing up and coming behind her to actually get things going. That's the stuff that's got to be fixed. Sorry, I get a bit emotional about this stuff, but that's the stuff that's got to be fixed. That's the stuff that wasn't right. And now moving forward, and Stuart, I know that you're going to be as strong advocate as you can, but moving forward, there has to be a quick response. When people need things and they need answers, that has to happen quickly, and it can't get bogged down, and it can't get bogged down in the bureaucracy. So I guess that's probably all I've got to say. I'm really happy. Louise, thank you for organising the meeting. It's actually really important because it's important for us to get feedback as well. We're all back in Wellington this week. We're all going to be back in Wellington. And we do advocacy down there, and we do try and make the points. My job is to hold the government to account and try and put as much pressure on them. What's that? You can all come if you want. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we'll get some buses. We'll do a road trip. So I want to acknowledge the mayor that's here as well. Yeah.
Are you paying?
Pardon? Oh, am I paid? Yeah.
Are you paying for bus?
I'll get the buses. I'm not sure we go. Well, I'm not sure if they'll let us. I'm not sure if they'll let us camp on the front lawn. But I'll certainly get the buses. But listen, I'll wrap it up there. I know you want to go to some Q&A, and very keen to hear Nicole as well. So, and then look, welcome to take some feedback and questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. And it's an honour to be back here, actually, to come up here 4 weeks ago and listen to you all, listen to your stories, listen to your pain, and then go away with what you had told us. ACT actually came up with 15 ideas on how to help you get through the cyclone and its recovery, and I want to share those with you today. So it's an honour to be able to come back here to do that, to be invited and to be able to speak, hopefully, the words that you want to hear, because this is actually about you, it's not about us down in Wellington. I just want to give you a bit of my background. My eldest daughter's father is buried here. My grandfather is buried in Tolaga. My roots, while they do come from Whangarei, they also come from the East Coast. So for me to fly in for the first time and look over Eskdale, it actually brought me to tears on the plane. I couldn't believe what I was seeing and the devastation. So my heart and my aroha goes out to you all. When I left here the last time that we were invited up, I went back and sat down with our caucus and said, wow, you know, we have to look not only at crime, but how we can go about helping the rebuild, that recovery side. And we looked at the policies that we already have that we think are still instrumental and would be quite helpful to the community. A couple of those policies include not only bringing back 3 strikes for serious violent offending, but also having 3 strikes for burglary. When we looked at the stats for burglary, and they are numbers that range into the hundreds of thousands. We don't have hundreds of thousands of burglars. We have a niche number of burglars that commit the same offence over and over again. We want to ensure that our communities are kept safe by putting serious violent offenders back into prison, but also making sure that those that burgle have consequences. Because if we catch them 3 times, it's more than likely they've done a hell of a lot more than 3 burglaries. But when I went back to our caucus after the first meeting, it was very apparent that the very first thing we need to do when a cyclone hits or a natural disaster hits is employ the Army under Section 9 of the Defence Act. I remember a gentleman 4 weeks ago stood up, and I think he put it absolutely beautifully. Having the Army be involved is not saying that the police have not been able to do their job. It's helping police do their job. Having the Army does not mean that they take over from police. It means they act as constables to police, and they're only there for the period of time that the police need them. Now, this was employed down in Christchurch after the earthquake, and I understand that it could have been employed here, but it was difficult because of the sheer size of the territory. But at the end of the day, if we invoke Section 9 of the Defence Act, then we can deploy the Army where they're needed. And it was obvious that they were needed in certain areas where safety felt compromised.
But who's got the best logistics to operate all that? The Defence Force. Mm-hmm. They've got the best logistics. You know,
We're going to have question and answers shortly.
The other thing that we need to have a look at, and this was a policy that came out after our last meeting, is to also change Section 9 of the Sentencing Act, making anybody who is caught looting, thieving or burglaring a house during a state of emergency and being caught would mean that they would have aggravating factors at their sentencing when they did so. So in other words, I didn't word that very well, I'm going to start that one again. If you're caught looting during a state of emergency, Section 9 of the Sentencing Act would mean that that would become an aggravating factor at the time of sentencing. Now you add that to the 3 strikes for burglary and we could have some people doing some seriously long time. The thing is, we have a government at the moment who is absolutely certain that they need to reduce the prison numbers. And they've done so. Since 2017, when we had 12,000 people in prison, we're now down to 8,000 in the muster. But what we do have also is a 6,000 person increase in those on home detention. And that, I'm sure you found in your community, did not work when the power went out and the ankle bracelets stopped working. We need to make sure that serious violent criminals know where the line is, that those that continuously break the law, the recidivist offenders, know where the line is, and they are put in prison to do time when they cross that line. It's as simple as that. So those were our main points for how we would look to work should we have another state of emergency, whether it be a cyclone, whether it be an earthquake. We need to make sure that the people, first and foremost, are looked after and feel safe. That is paramount. But when we look at the Recovery Act came up with some other ideas, and I've got a few of them, so please excuse me while I read them very quickly. I've already spoken about Section 9 of the Sentencing Act and Section 9 of the Defence Act, but we also believe that a special economic zone needs to be set up around the Tairāwhiti and Hawke's Bay areas so that we can get into a rebuild pretty quickly. We want to cut all the wasteful spending that this government is currently using your taxpayer money on and focus on the recovery. We want to increase the financing that's available to you so it allows you to quickly finance and be able to afford to do your rebuild. We would remove the RMA barriers to rebuilding and repairing with special legislation so recovery doesn't need to wait for consents. We would also have, thank you. We would also introduce a recovery visa for people to come in from overseas so that they can help with the rebuild and make sure that the visa that they have lasts for 3 years so you don't get them leaving halfway through their rebuild. There would be a materials equivalence register, and that is so that there is an ample supply of building materials for our rebuild. And we would have a 3-year moratorium on the minimum wage increases, an exemption from fair pay agreements just within the special economic zone that had been set up. We would streamline foreign investment so that businesses needing investment can rebuild with access to capital. We would replace council building consent processes with private insurance, and we would share GST revenue with local government to fund the infrastructure that you're so desperately in need of. We would focus local government on core goods and services and price flood risk properties through variable rates. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a number of things here. I'm going to get into my next page. Including reviewing the role and the purpose of the EQC in response to climate events. And the forestry slash, we want to make it easier to remove and set the mitigation measures and explore refundable bonds upon planting. Now, in regards to firearms and the crime that you've been experiencing, one thing I do have to say is I actually feel for Minister Nash, the comments that he made, I completely understood. I really got that. And you made 2 lots of comments, and they were both on firearms, and they were both out of frustration. And all I can say, Minister, that's what you get when you rush firearm laws. We need to have the focus on the criminals and the crime and not on the law-abiding. And I wish you'd chewed the fat with me, because we could have actually sat down and tried to come up with something together on how we can keep our communities safe, keep firearms in law-abiding hands, and make sure that when you go to sleep at night, you can actually get sleep, not sleep with one eye open. So I hope that some of the policies that we have ideas on will help you when you vote in October, but also help you have a bit of faith that the people down in Wellington, no matter what party they come from, we all have your best interests at heart. And ideally, we could try and work together to make sure that when we do face a crisis, that you're not facing fear at the same time. So thank you all for the opportunity to talk today, and I look forward to answering any questions you have.
Okay, so probably I just want to remind one of the points that probably hasn't been brought up was about the community liaison as well. I think that should be part of policy, is that when something like this goes down, I mean, really it was the community that had to rely on each other, you know, and so I think there's a lot of knowledge out there, and I think that needs to be considered with any sort of policy or any rebuild, anything like that that happens. There should be some of these experts that have been doing it so far to give advice to you guys. So that was one of our demands, if you like. The 105 numbers happened. I believe that there's an option to go to 6, and that gets you through as a priority call. But I think now it's time for questions and answers. So we'll start with you. Can I just grab you a mic, though? You don't have to come up here. So I've got a very pretty assistant that's going to help me. Are you dressed up?
Hello.
That's up.
Can you hear me?
You're good.
Hi, I'm Danelle Kendrick. Hope you got my letter, Stuart Nash, and read it very well.
I read it.
My sister's a police officer here in Napier. She was one of the police officers going up and down Pakawai on a jet boat, saving people off their roofs. And in many discussions I've had with her over the last month in regards to response, a huge question that I want to know is juvies. A lot of the crime that is going on in Hawke's Bay is done by juvies because they know they get away with it, because the repercussions of their age don't get them put in the firing line. And a lot of these gangs are getting the youngies to come in and do a lot of their looting, their crimes, everything like that. And even though they are young, I think something needs to be put in place and implemented so that they have more repercussions, so that they don't get put in that position to do it rather than people that are of age.
What's your question? Do you want
So is there something getting implemented into government, into policies, that they can have more of a sentence, or rather than a slap on the hand, you're too young, you can get away with it?
Look, first of all, I just want to say thank you. Let me just say one thing that Mark said that I actually need to correct. I got in trouble, I lost the portfolio because of the perception that I phoned the Commissioner and tried to tell him what to do. In the Policing Act, politicians are not allowed to tell police what to do. And one thing I want to say, Mark, I don't disagree with the surge response. There is no way anyone from the Prime Minister, the Minister of Police, or anyone down could tell the Commissioner what he could do in terms of a response into Napier. So when Mark said that what should have happened is when police should have swarmed into the region, they had 145 more, that's 20% more than the police that ordinarily reside here. But no politician, listen to me, no politician has the ability to tell the police what to do. It's why I got fired from the portfolio. Now, I just want to say that. The second thing is I understand where you're coming from, and it is a really big concern, but I don't think any of us want to see 14, 15-year-olds in prison. There are, the sort of society, the vision for the sort of society I have does not have 14 and 15-year-olds in prison, okay? There There are programs and there are policies that are being worked on at the moment that will deal with the worst of the offenders. A number of them are younger than this. And I do acknowledge that it is a real dilemma. It's a philosophical dilemma, but it's a practical dilemma. What do you do with young kids who are committing crime? What all the stats show is actually 80% of kids who get caught committing crime never commit a crime again. The other thing I would say is, so what do? And the other thing, one thing, Nicole, again, I just want to say, the serious violent offenders are in prison. They're not on home detention. I just want to make that very clear as well. But look, we understand the issues. There is a cabinet committee that's been set up, ministerial committee set up to deal with the issues that you are talking about around juvenile offenders. It's not an easy one.
Just firstly, on the issue that Stu talked about, ministers can't direct the Commissioner on operational matters. That's true. The Commissioner has absolute operational autonomy, and he should have autonomy. He's the best one to know where your sister should be operating and what she should be doing. However, the government should be able to call the Commissioner in, along with the head of New Zealand Defence Forces, and say, this is what the response that we want now from our agencies. Otherwise, why do you have a government? You might as well not have them. So absolutely they should have done that, and they could have done that. The next point, coming to the serious youth offenders. So we've lost some innocence in this country, and not far from my own electorate last week, we had a young guy in his mid-20s who was trying to get home at about 4 o'clock in the evening, and he had a fender bender with a vehicle that had a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old offender in it. They got out and they stabbed him to death while he sat in the driver's seat of the vehicle. We have to accept now, sadly, that we've lost a bit of our innocence, and we actually have youth offenders now. Sorry, I keep standing in front of you. I'll try to come over here. That we have youth and juvenile offenders now that will carry weapons and are prepared to use them. They get fed on a diet on TikTok and social media of violence. They'll go and do a ram raid, and they'll put us posting up, goading other juvenile gangs to go out and do a better one or a more violent one. That's the environment we live in. So unless we're honest about it and we're willing to tackle it, and these guys aren't, because I'm sorry, I understand what you're saying, Stu, but this is the whole problem with the ideology that sits inside this Labour cabinet, is that I don't want to see a New Zealand where a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old has to go into a youth juvenile centre. Well, the reality of it is they're on the fast track into the adult criminal justice system, unless we do something. So we made an announcement last year, and you probably never heard about it because it's very hard for us to get cut through with the mainstream media. But we made an announcement around youth and juvenile offending. We're going to create a new category called a serious young offender category. If a young person between 10 and 17 commits a violent offence or a serious offence twice, then they then get the young serious offender category. We're going to support and work with local organisations for those aged 10 to 15. We're going to give them more funding. These are organisations that actually deliver results, not that are just given money and then left out there in the ether to go and do what they like. They actually have to front up to a cabinet committee and show that they're delivering results. We said that we'd use supervision orders, so there'd be supervision orders put in place, and we'd use electronic monitoring, so that we actually knew where they were. For offenders from 15 to 17-year-olds, we said that we'd form a military academy. And we'd take them out of the community and that they're causing harm in. We'd take them away from the adult gangs who are influencing them and making them make bad decisions. And we'd put them into a military academy based in Whenuapai, in Trentham and in Burnham. And it's styled on the system that exists right now called the Limited Service Volunteer Program, that captures 17 or 18 through to 24-year-olds. It's an 8-week course. It's extremely successful. It turns these young people's lives around. It has a 70% success rate. So we believe that if we take these young people that are in the community causing all this harm, this violent crime, and we put them into an environment like that with the best mentors and role models that we have, and we extrapolate that course out for 12 months, number one, we're keeping the community safe. Number two, we've got a very good chance of turning that young person's life around and stop them from going into the adult criminal justice system. So we would be much tougher. By the way, just to correct a perception here around electronic monitoring, we had a shooting outside the Henderson police station in West Auckland a few days ago with an offender, a violent offender that was on electronic monitoring and who had broken his conditions. So don't try to convince any of us, Stuart, that there's not offenders out there right now. When you have a 45% reduction in custodial sentences since 2017, you're going to have violent offenders in the community that shouldn't be there. And that's the stuff that we have to fix and we have to start tightening up on. Thanks, Louise.
Okay, I'm just going to ask that we keep the answers really quick. Yeah, you can definitely speak, because we do need to get on to recovery as well, and I do want to give you guys a chance to ask some questions. So Nicole's just going to quickly respond to the youth crime, is that correct?
Really quick.
Thank you.
We understood before we had the cyclone that there was a need to look at youth offending and what was happening. The ram raid showed us a portion of it, but also the number of youth that were coming to police attention also showed us that as well. We announced last year about the electronic monitoring of kids who commit crime. If they were caught 3 times, they would go on an electronic bracelet. We were shunned by the media for that. But the reasoning behind it was that we would know where they were. And if they were going out doing ram raids, they were being tracked. So it's not like their mates wanted them around. You know, so the whole idea is to get them away from the environment that they're in. The other thing that we announced, the other policy we announced last year, was infringement notices on kids that misbehave. We need to show them that there is a line, because if they don't get it by the time they're 18, they just get locked up in prison and it's way too late. So infringement notices would mean that get caught shoplifting one day, you could be cleaning the graffiti off the shop wall the next day. It's an immediate consequence to those actions, and I'm being hurried up, so I hope that helps.
Thank you.
A general question. Where's the Minister of Civil Defence?
Who is the Minister?
Who is the Minister of Civil Defence?
To be fair, this was specifically for crime and looting.
That's fine. But we're all here.
Oh, you mean, yeah, okay, just in general?
In general.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to answer.
Civil Defence sent out their alarm system at 5:28 in the middle of the flood. People drowned.
Yeah.
Where is the Minister?
Could we maybe just, can we park that one for another meeting?
No.
Well, because this is about crime and looting, and I understand, and we will bring...
We can't go on unless we get the fundamentals right.
Yeah.
And we haven't got...
Which is what we're trying to do here today with one of the fundamentals. We can't do everything
Right.
today.
There will be a review of the response from CDME. Police will also do their own one, so you can be
How do
assured
we get
anything like that will be
input?
addressed in any response and any recommendations that come
How do we get input?
How do you get... What was that question?
As with any public, like I said, I have no doubt, I can't make this promise because I'm not the minister and I haven't seen a paper come through Cabinet, but when in a response like this, there is always a form of inquiry to look at how things could be done better. It's never a witch hunt, it's always a proactive, and it would surprise me, but I can't make any promises, it would surprise me if when they do that review, they don't have public meetings asking people to give their experiences.
Okay, how are you going to inform the public? Because I only heard by gossip that this meeting was on today. I still have no Wi-Fi, no internet, no power, no communication. We're not being communicated with the people who are lacking everything.
I can answer that if you want to move on to recovery. Do you want to move on to recovery? Or
Do we... Is everyone satisfied with asking questions? Okay. Oh, no. Can we please keep it brief though? Because... Yeah, go on.
We set up our own street. We set up our own street sort of stop security and I rang and asked, why can't we have the army come in, all the territories come and man a stop, which is people from the street had to man it. They were working all day on their properties. At night, we're coming out for 2 hours, manning them. We never asked for the police. We never said we had a problem with the police, but that's what it came across. We were regularly telling the guys that would come around that area that they were doing a great job. Why is it so bloody hard for someone to get the army involved in it instead of taking police
Okay,
off
so
what their normal thing.
What I will say is, Nicole, with all due respect, Nicole, you actually got it wrong. The last time the last time the armed services were deployed in a constabulary role was the Queen Street riots, when the Navy was given the ability to act as temporary constables. The only people in the country who can deploy the army in New Zealand in peacekeeping times are the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defence. It is very, very rarely done, and for very good reasons. But like I said, I suspect...
What are the reasons then? What are the reasons? Why did they not do it?
Why
did they not do it?
First of all, the army is not...
We didn't see
The army is...
anybody in Pakawai for weeks. We
Look,
saw
what-
nobody in Pakawai.
Do you want the answer or not?
Yes.
One thing I will say, and I said it in my opening remarks, is I do believe in hindsight, that perhaps police would have been well served to have a police car at the T intersections that lead into all these communities. I think that would have made a real difference. But deploying the army sends a message that I don't think we want in our communities. No, we don't. Deploying the army sends a message that police have lost control and we now are under martial law.
Okay, we've got another question down the back there.
Who does Costa answer to? Who is his boss? Does he answer to anybody, or is he the font of all knowledge?
So the Commissioner of Police is appointed by the Governor General. The Commissioner of Police, because I was involved in the latest appointment, went through a series of interviews with the State Services Commissioner. There were 4, 5 or 6 who put their name forward. In the end, myself and the Prime Minister got a recommendation around who should be appointed. We made a recommendation to the Governor General, and the Governor General appointed the Commissioner of Police. He does not
Answer to anybody.
He doesn't answer to politicians, but nor should he.
He does.
He does not answer to politicians.
He serves the government of the day. He serves the government of the day. That's what the Commissioner does.
But Mitch, politicians cannot tell the Commissioner what to do.
You're mixing the issues, Stu.
I'm not.
Okay, let's move on. We're not going to get into an argument because we need to make sure we can hear. David?
Just a point here, everybody. At the last meeting, there was one thing that was very resounding. We wanted Bayview blocked. Everybody agreed with it. Everybody, yay! Right? We had the police do their job well. However, I have to ask the question, when they put out the caravans, we'll call them, why did they not put them and block like we asked? That's what we asked for. We were told we were going to be listened to. That's the first thing, okay?
Wait on. Do you want an answer to that, or do you want?
I would love to know why they gave us all the overheads of having the police there, but they didn't block because the mob was still coming through. Why did we get the overheads and not the job done?
My understanding, talking to Jeanette, is that she came up with a proposal. And I'm sorry Jeanette isn't here because, it shouldn't be up to politicians to answer on behalf of police. But that's beside the point. My understanding is that Jeanette came up with this proposal. My understanding also, and there may be someone in the room that she consulted with around this proposal, and she was told this would address the issue that both myself and Jeanette Park, I'm talking about, the district commander, had heard at the meeting the night before. So my understanding is when she went out and asked people, is this what you want? She was told, yes, this will make us feel a hell of a lot better than we did when you came along to the meeting.
I acknowledge what you said, thank you very much. One other point that's really important, and I think people need to take this on board, a lot of the communication problems we've had, in my mind, because I own a monitoring station in security, we have to have 3 systems for backup. Then we have a generator and we have a backup generator, right? I am concerned that our big companies, Spark and the others, Vodafone, I'm not going to pick on anybody really, right, didn't have good systems in place. There should be regulatory requirements that our government ensures is in place so that any of these companies that are going to do communications actually do it properly.
Okay, can you just stand? Hang on, we've just got one down here, and And then we'll go back there. And I'm sorry I didn't acknowledge you before, Keith. Keith Price, councillor from Napier, Spongy. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to ask, Stuart mentioned a review. How can we have any faith in a review if we have a police minister who's determined to believe that there hasn't been a problem?
You simply, I mean, look, I stood up as the former police minister and the minister at the time of this and said, I can't direct police, but perhaps in terms of making people feel, giving them a sense of security at a point in time of massive stress and vulnerability, that police could have done something different. So I acknowledge that, even though it's not my role to tell police what to do, but nor will I, in any review, will I tell them that they must do this next time. You know, what I think, and again, I can't comment on any review the police may well do of this, but I would suspect any review of policing operations will ask for public submissions, and at that point in time, you can voice your concerns. But, I can't say that the current police minister doesn't believe there's a problem. We have increased police numbers by the greatest number in the history of the New Zealand Police Service. There is now more police than there has ever been. But, police is always looking for ways to do things better, always looking for learnings. And I suspect out of this, you will get that.
Still no cops overnight, mate.
Thank you. If you stand and just use your big voice.
Yeah, this one's to Stu. There's a lot of talk about increased crime after this thing, but do the statistics actually prove that? That's one question. The next one is, why have we got a baby cop who lives at Dartmoor and his police vehicle is kept in Taravale and you've got a police house and a police station?
Exactly. Yeah.
That would have been a big help in this.
That would have been an enormous help.
Look, first of all, to the second part, point well made. Okay, I accept that. The second thing I would say is, I don't want to get in the same trouble that others have got in the past. Because I know that policing is about perception, right? If people feel unsafe, then that is their reality. It doesn't matter if crime is up or crime's down or it's happening in some other suburb. If people are feeling unsafe, then that is not a good way to live in our communities. I mean, I can get you, I know the stats, I can get you the stats, but I don't think in this situation it's particularly helpful because I don't think, initially, as I've admitted about 3 or 4 times now, I think that perhaps, my personal opinion, I think that perhaps a couple of things could have been done differently to give this community a much greater sense of confidence than they initially had.
Well, what I did, I went out for a week and a half because I was a security officer and just cruised around. The police knew about it with a red light on. But I didn't see any suspicious vehicles in the week and a half and I was out every night.
Look, the numbers back you up on that, but again, I just want to deal with the perception of people. The perception was you felt unsafe.
Okay, I'm going to jump in now.
Keen to know, oh, sorry, yep, go for it. I'm just keen to know where you policed. Because,
waiting patiently, and I'm the city councillor for this, and I'm part of this area, but I see the involvement in this as the whole area, actually the whole of Napier, which you come under policing rights because you can't get Hastings to come over here. I have a real issue over the fact that we have a patrol base in Napier, not a police station as such. We have no holding cells, and it was completely shown up here. The police should be able to, if they lock someone up doing these looting, where do they put them? They should have a police station with cells, and it should be manned 24/7. Stupid when I'm out doing Mark. I was 28 years in the police. I was in the anti-terror squad, one notch above what he was. I was a detective and saw all of this, and I just can't believe we don't have our own police station. Because policing-wise, for Napier, it's not Napier City, it's right up to halfway to Wairau.
Keith,
can I give the mic to
just very quickly, Keith, you do know we do have our own police station here. It doesn't have cells, and you will also know that when I was the police opposition spokesperson, I pushed incredibly hard to get cells here. I was completely overridden, and it went ahead before we even got here. Now, Keith, I suspect in a review of the integrity of the services provided to a city of 60,000 people, there may well be that recommendations come out. Again, I can't preempt any review, but I pushed really hard for that and I missed out and I didn't get it.
So really what I'm after here is to hear some sort of commitment that we're going to get a proper police.
The other thing I will say,
and we're going to have holding cells.
The other thing I will say is all the evidence shows you can either have police officers sitting in a station 24/7, or you can have them patrolling around in cars. In the old days, when you were a police officer, people, because they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have electricity when you were a police officer, people used to come to the police station. They used to come to the police station. Now, very, very few people turn up to a police station after 6 and before 8. So they're better off patrolling because it's better. Police are better able to respond when they're in our communities as opposed to sitting there waiting for the call.
It became very strong. So if you wanted to see...
Okay, we need to... Sorry, Keith, we need to move on, buddy. Lindley wants to ask a question and then we'll come to you, Tony, quickly.
I'd just like to ask where the police were last night when my daughter's car got literally smashed to bits on the side of the road for no apparent reason. There's nobody living in Parkaway, there's nobody there, there's no cops there. Everyone drives through it. The cops have to drive through to go everywhere else. What are we supposed to do?
So what do you want me to say?
Well, no, sadly, the police aren't here to answer that, which is, very quickly.
To feel safe and secure. We don't feel safe or secure.
Can I just say that in response to that, I had a public safety meeting in my own patch in Orewa yesterday, on Friday, and one of the first issues I just want to address is that we've got massive underreporting now, right throughout the whole country. Right, the 105 line you could hear in the first meeting that we had let people down. It doesn't work. They need to do a complete rework of the 105 line. The online part of it is quite good, but I've got retailers up in my patch that ring it and they're waiting 40 minutes for a response. They can't afford that. Just really quickly, why your daughter didn't get a response from the police is because you've got a thin blue line that's responding to a 35% increase in violent crime. 50% increase in...
It's not even the sticks. The first time it got broken into, we'd been knee-deep in mud for 14 hours.
Yep.
With no coverage in Parkaway, so it was just the least of our worries in that moment. This last night, we weren't even there. I've come straight from there to here. So I haven't reported it yet either. Some of the situations don't necessarily get reported because there's just so much other stuff going on.
I agree with you, and having been a past member myself, I get deeply frustrated with this because it's slowly eroding public confidence, and I'm worried about the next public confidence survey that comes out. I will always stand with our frontline police because they've got limited numbers. They are stretched in terms of trying to deal with a massive crime wave in this country, and they have to prioritise, and they're not getting to everything that they want to get to. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be. They should be, but first of all, we have to start reverse the figures and the numbers around, a massive decrease in our prison numbers at the same time a massive increase in violent crime. We have to fix that. We actually have to fix. I agree with you entirely, and I acknowledge it, and it's frustrating, and I get as frustrated as you. I have the same issues in my patch, and I wish the police could get there, but the fact of the matter is, unless we deal with where we've come to in the last 5 years, and we start to turn it around and give the police more time, I mean, they're dealing with a 60% increase in mental health call-outs. They've had a 20% increase in numbers.
That's only building.
Pardon? In this area, it's going to get a lot worse. I agree with you completely.
Okay, look, we really are running out of time for questions. I'm just going to have one more, because I said Tony. Can you make it a brief one and keep on the subject of recovery? Sorry. Yeah.
Mr. Nash, you say perceived fear. Hello?
That's it.
Hello. You say perceived fear, so I'm going to ask you a very personal question. I live across the road, so we're the first house. How would you feel with your family? Happened twice last week. We just expected every night to have torches shone into your daughter's bedroom constantly to see if we're home. how would you feel? Is that fear? Am I right to feel fearful?
Yeah.
So me and my neighbour are constantly going down with torches back, shining them, telling them to F off.
You know, I suppose...
Is that normal?
No, it's not. And you know, that is not the communities that I think, that's not what we should have to put up with. And I completely buy into that. And, you know, I would hate to live in that situation. And I acknowledge that that must be incredibly stressful. But when I say perception, what I meant is if people perceive that they're unsafe, if people feel unsafe, then that is their reality. Okay? Now...
It is our reality.
I am... Okay, well, do you want... Look, the thing is the stats... Oh, no, I'm not going to go down.
Okay, let's just keep it seemly. Let's keep it seemly. Come on.
Okay, so I know how everybody feels, and I don't think we should be blaming these guys up here because they are listening.
And they're here. They are here.
Up, what my question is you have listened to our views, you've taken on board everything everyone's saying, you obviously feel the same as we do, and you're saying you can't make this, you can't advise the police what they can do and what they can't do. So how do we know, or is there a process that you guys go back and talk to the police commissioner and say, look, we had this meeting, this is the views, this is how people are feeling, how do we go forward in another situation?
Okay, well, the thing is that even though I'm no longer Minister of Police, I'm still the lead minister for cyclone recovery for Hawke's Bay. And so I will always, like I said, it is a shame that the police aren't here. But again, it is what it is. What I will do is I'll give Jeanette a call after this meeting, and I will say, this is what I heard. I said, my very strong recommendation, Jeanette, is talk to Lou as your representative. Lou may well get a couple of, may get representatives from the community, voice the same concerns to the police and say, and you know, you can then put forward what you would like the police to do in order to allay a number of the concerns you have. So, you know, we will always ask police, have you got the resources to keep your community safe? If they have, if they haven't, then it is the politician's job to get the police the resources they need to make you feel safe. So, I will always, I've been a member of Parliament, either based here or representing Napier since 2008. This is, you know, my family's been here since 1865. I am incredibly passionate about the region, the electorate of Napier, the city of Napier, and I will always push for what I think is right for the whole electorate. So I'll go back and I'll have a conversation with Jeanette, and hopefully she'll sit down with Lou and she'll get a good summary.
Was it the Minister of Police you meant, or whoever makes the decision? That's cool. Because I think that was one of the demands that I had today, was that Stuart is our MP, so he needs to have that continuity for what we're asking for the new Minister of Police. We need that dialogue to continue. I've requested a meeting with her next week. I know you two are very desperate to ask a question, so I'm going to let you, but these are the very, very final two. So I'll go with you first, and then you in the blue at the back.
I've noticed that Jeanette Parker is quick to jump out and say, hey, your area doesn't have an increase in crime as a district. But talking to this community, Bayview, Whirinaki and Eskdale,
and
Pakawhai, we should be having their statistics, not Eastern District. So were we looking at it hasn't rised as a district, or are we looking at it hasn't rised for this part of the community?
We don't know. It's all very murky.
Yeah.
Where did the stats come from?
It is a very good question. My understanding is it is, police can break it down. It is, this part of the community. But one thing I would say, and Mitch was right in this, the 105 isn't ideal. The online stuff is really, really good. But police make operational decisions based on need, okay? And that is why we say, and please don't think I'm telling you how to suck eggs here, but it really is vitally important then when you see something suspicious, when a crime has occurred, that you do report it in, because that is how police deploy resources based on need. So if it's not reported and police aren't aware of it, then resources won't be deployed. So please, I just urge you to report anything suspicious, but certainly crimes that have taken place. It really is that important.
Oh, Stuart, Troy from Parkway here. How can we get in touch with the police on an operational level, considering we can't do it through you, to have a discussion with them about what we need in Parkway? Because there's some pretty clear and simple views on what some of the fix is, and the guys on the street that we talk to are great, but they come past you every half an hour, but they're not there when the looters turn up. So
I'll help facilitate that.
can I have Jeanette's number?
What was it,
Can I have Jeanette's number? Secondly, as the recovery minister, can we have an advance at Parkway so we can employ a security company to sit at the end of the roads? There's only 3 roads we need to man. It'll just be a little advance.
What about some of the Red Cross money?
Let's have a talk about that.
Okay, you've got that commitment from Stuart, so he'll hook you up, I guess, with Jeanette.
No, I'll hook you up with Jeanette.
Okay, me.
And then...
And you. And Lindley. We'll do it. Awesome. Yeah, we'll do it. Okay, so I think from what I'm hearing, I really want to thank you guys. I know it's not meant to be a political meeting, but it's only politics that's going to get us what we need. And, you know, we're the experts, and we've learnt that through the University of Hard Knocks, and you guys need to take this stuff and take it back and make it easier for the next lot that have to go through this. But like I said before, we're not going away, and neither is crime, because, like you say, if we're perceiving fear, then it's real. It is real. And I've never lived in New Zealand my whole life and felt so vulnerable and scared, and my house wasn't affected. So God knows how you guys are feeling who were affected, and it's not the New Zealand that I want to live in. So we really need the politicians to change this, and it is election year, so that's the only way we're going to get it to happen. What I'd like to see from this meeting is I want to know what those stats are. I want to know what the stats, like how the reporting worked, because at the moment we've been told there was no spike, and I literally don't believe that. So I want to know what that is. I think to answer some of the questions from today is that we have our own little task force. The lady in the black, that you raised that before. How about we have our own little task force so that we can communicate with people that are going to be able to hear us? And I think that's the way that we need to move forward. We can't keep having meetings, you know, and I respect that the media are here, so it's really getting the message out, but we can't keep having meetings. So we need to start a little task force that can then speak with the politicians directly, and that's how we can move forward. I'm thinking, okay, on the top of my feet. That's not a saying. Anyway, so can I hand over, on the top of my feet, can I just hand over to Stuart now? And he's just going to talk a little bit about the recovery. And then, Quint, you still here, buddy? Quint's going to give us an update on the roading and Unison. And then maybe you can just mention about the funding. That would be epic. Thank you.
The one stat that I was talking to Mike Hosking about was the fact that since June last year, there's been 20,000 charges laid against 7,200 gang members since June. So if you think we're being soft on crime, believe me, there is a massive big target against these people. 20,000 charges laid against 7,200 gang members since June last year. So if you think we're not going hard against these gangs, then I'm sorry, you're mistaken. You wanted stats? Well, there's one for you. Don't hear that.
But it's catch and release.
Rubbish. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about.
Just while you're bracing.
Now, do you want to hear about recovery? Because I've got to go in half an hour. Sorry, in 10 minutes, I'm sorry.
Let me speak to that stat. It's really important, because what you're doing is you're pulling the wool over people's eyes. The problem with that stat is this. Half of those charges will be traffic infringement notices.
So what? Let's go after those gangs in any way we possibly can and get them off the streets, Mitch.
They're traffic infringement.
No, they're charges. 20,000 charges.
Straight to the dunny to be used.
20,000 charges.
The other thing is 7,000 gang members. There's 8,500 gang members on the gang register. The Operation Cobalt guys were writing to me immediately when they heard that stat, saying there's no way that we've captured 7,000 gang members. So those stats and that information that the government's actually putting out, people don't have a high level of confidence about
Well,
that
that's
at the
true.
moment.
I'm sorry, Mitch. You
And
can't use
so
stats
I will
one
be digging
way or
into that and actually
another.
holding
Go
back.
on.
Okay, we're going to talk about recovery.
Is anyone interested in what's happening with regard to recovery?
Yes.
You are? Okay, good. So in Hawke's Bay, I mean, as people know, there is an extreme weather recovery cabinet committee. It's chaired by the Minister of Finance. The Prime Minister's on that, but the Minister's responsible for the other area, for the regions impacted also on that. So you've got Kelvin Davis from up north, you've got Michael Wood for Auckland and Coromandel, you've got Kiri Tapu Allen for Tairāwhiti, myself for Hawke's Bay, Kieran McAnulty for Wairarapa, and Nanaia Mahuta for Waikato. What was that? So what you've got is a cabinet committee and a small agency set up to deal with this because we recognise that it is significant. What is happening in Hawke's Bay is we've set up the Hawke's Bay Recovery Agency that is funded, and that will be the one source of truth in terms of all the information that's out there. What I do know, are you interested or not? What I do know is I acknowledge that the Napier City Council, the Hastings District Council and the Regional Council have actually been good at getting comms out there, but I also, and Rokikatahi, but I also acknowledge that if you want information, you've got to go to a whole lot of different sites to find it, or you've got to be networked in. And that is, I think, almost impossible for the vast majority of people who have any interest or after some form of resolution to access. So the Hawke's Bay Recovery Agency, there is a delivery board there which is made up of Hawke's Bay citizens based on pure competency and experience. It's not a political board in any way, shape or form. It is chaired by Blair O'Keefe, who chairs the port, and I think he chairs Unison as well, but is a very experienced governance, and it has a number of people, I think it has 6 people on there from across the region who have very, very strong competency in delivery. It is headed up interimly by Kiriana Brooking. A number of you will know Kiriana, and until the permanent CE is appointed. It has a mandate to work for 1 year with the ability to extend it for another year after that. In terms of what's going to happen with regard to, are we going to pay you out? Are we going to let you rebuild or whatever? You will know that a house that's been red stickered or a house that's been yellow stickered, it doesn't mean that you can't rebuild. That's a health designation. But what we're doing and what we've come out, and this was announced when Grant was down here last week, is we're getting the insurance company to give us a whole lot of anonymised data, which we're matching up with all the council's data to have a look at high-risk areas. We'll start on the 4th of April at the 5th of April at that Cabinet Committee meeting then to determine what begins to happen in our residential areas. Now, there are 2 areas that we need to sort out. Obviously, there's the horticulture and the farming areas that have been completely smashed as well. There's also the residential, a lot of you, the residential situation that we need to give people a level of certainty whether A, we're going to allow you to rebuild, or B, we're not going to allow you to rebuild. Every one of those decisions will be based on consultation and the facts and information. So we're not going to come out from the beehive and say, thou shalt not build in this area. But I think, there are certain areas where we are going to allow people to rebuild, or it'll be up to them. But then there are certain areas that I suspect people won't want to rebuild, but given history, both previous and what we've just seen under Gabrielle, that people won't want to rebuild back in. At that point, and I was out at Shore Road yesterday. Is anyone here from Shore Road? Well, you know what it's like out there. Now, I can't preempt anything that the Cabinet Committee is going to come up with, but it would absolutely astound me if any committee came and said, you can rebuild back in Shore Road. Because that really...
North Shore Road or Shore Road?
No, Shore Road. Shore Road. Where Hooker areas, back of there. But there's a fantastic little community in there. It was idyllic until this wiped through it, and now it's been completely done over. So those decisions will begin to be taken at that point. And it's then that we come up with in consultation, we come up with how we're going to compensate people for whom we have told they can't go back to where they've lived. Keeping in mind, in Christchurch, there are still 2 or 3 people who are living within the red zone there. They have no services, no power, no water, no sewage, but they still live there. So by early mid-April, we will begin to start start consulting with communities around whether you can rebuild or whether you can't rebuild. Then it comes into the process of, if we say you can't rebuild, or you shouldn't rebuild, we can't tell people what they can't do, then we start talking about what a compensation package will look like. We're also working very closely with the councils around consenting. I mean, Nicole is right. The last thing and the councils, the Recovery Agency has identified a whole lot of areas that could be suitable for subdevelopment intersections, because we've always needed a lot of houses in Hawke's Bay. Obviously that need has increased with what we've just seen. That plan is going to be to government very soon. At that point in time, we'll make decisions around whether we can allow councils, what a fast tracking process looks like. There's another area, there's a national environmental standard for highly productive soils which says you can't build in certain areas. In conjunction with the councils, we're taking a look at that to see whether we can modify that to allow people to build maybe in the Dartmoor Valley or maybe in the East Valley, but above a certain area which is now currently classed as a highly productive soil, but in fact would make fantastic sections for people who want to remain in East Valley. When we come to the horticulture and the agriculture, mainly the horticulture, we know that the region is heavily reliant for our economic well-being on the horticulture sector. They have put a plan to government at this point in time. We are looking at that plan. It is very expensive, but we're looking at that and how we can work with the sector to come up with a financing mechanism that will allow them to build back. In terms of the stock banks, the Regional Council has about 248 kilometres of stock banks that it's responsible for managing. It's had to fix 5 kilometres of stock banks just temporarily after Gabrielle to make sure if we have serious rain during winter that they will hold. But obviously they are temporary fixes. So again, we're working with the Regional Council to say, okay, because of course Gabrielle, that the amount of rain that fell in Gabrielle was outside any modelling parameters that the council had modelled their 100-year flood predictions on. In fact, James Shaw and I, who was the CEO of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, we turned the first sod of the stock bank that was built behind EIT out in Taradale there. And I remember saying to James, seriously, mate? And he said, this is for the 1 in 500-year flood, and we built it a metre higher than the engineers wanted. That was 30 centimetres from the top. If that had breached, then the conversations probably wouldn't be different here, but the whole of Taradale would have been completely flooded. So we need to have a look at what we need to do in terms of, first of all, protecting communities, residential areas, and then how we protect, or what protection for our agricultural and horticulture area looks like as well. So all these conversations are happening at pace. But we also need to know we need to get this right, because whatever decision we will make, it will be challenged in court. It's just the nature of the way things work. So we've got to make sure we get the consultation right. It's got to make sure we get the facts right. It's got to make sure that the communities we're dealing with know why we're doing what we're doing and have input into what happens in your community. It will happen, and the Minister of Finance says this, we want this to happen a lot faster than Christchurch. And Christchurch, it actually took 4 months for any decisions to be made. We need to make those decisions quicker than that, and they're being worked on, like I said, at pace, but with integrity. I'm happy to answer questions with regard to that.
So can you just talk about consultation and what that means? Because your timeline, what you said was going to happen, and you talked about consultation at the start, but then you referred to consultation in mid-April. Is consultation just you delivering the outcome, and in the terms of reference of the task force, there's iwi, trade unions, local government, and a couple of other things. None of them are community. Talks of consultation with community, but there's no, other than local government, which do a pretty average job of it so far, and historically, of consultation with the community. So how's it going to happen?
So at this point, we actually haven't got the data to be able to make decisions or make recommendations that we can come out to the community to discuss and talk about. So how I would envisage this happening is, as soon as we got the data for this region, we would be probably, to be honest, I'd probably go to Lou and say, you're exceptionally good at organising a meeting for your communities. So how about what we do is we hold a meeting here, we go through that data, we have a look and see what it looks like, and we talk through some of the recommendations that have come out of that, and we ask for your opinions on this.
But why are the community involved in creating those recommendations?
Because the data is coming from the insurance industry and local council. and local Hastings in this case. And so what we will do is we will overlay that and into extreme high, medium and low risk. And at that point we can come up with recommendations around what this looks like. If I can, look, there's a guy called, I was going to provide you with a really good article to read, but maybe I'll hold off on that. But what we will do is we will come to you with the information and the data that we haven't got at the moment because the insurance industry hasn't as yet provided it to us, nor have the councils provided us with the information that we can come to you and have a meaningful conversation with.
That's just part of my point, and just what Lee was talking about is the feed into it. You're talking about the feed out of it once you've got the data. There's lots of information, local knowledge, historic knowledge that isn't shown in the data and won't come through in the data, and whether it's ideas about some engineering solution or part of it or something like that, it's not going to get captured.
It's a parallel process that will be running by the recovery agency as well. What we want at the moment is we want to be able to give you certainty. Those here whose houses have been either red stickered or yellow stickered, or who don't want to move back, or who believe that you can't live where you were living pre-Gabrielle, we want to be able to come to you with some solid ideas and get a solid set of recommendations and get your ideas around whether we've got this right. I mean, there's no point in me standing up here and saying I've been out to Shore Road, it looks really bad, I don't think you're going to be able to rebuild there, because you're going to say, based on what? Now I suspect that actually the insurance data is going to provide a level of insight that others won't be able to, because I suspect if you want to build back in Shore Road, your insurance company is going to say to you, really? If you really want to do that, either A, I'm not going to insure you, or B, your premiums are going to be sky high. So we need to have a look at that information before we can actually come to you with a set of recommendations. And then you feed into that and we come out with a final solution.
But Stuart, it's well known and well accepted in international practice, and I direct you to IAP too if you want to go and have a look at how that's done. Effective engagement starts well before you come up with recommendations. So I'd suggest maybe engaging with some of the community leaders well before you get to anywhere near recommendations to make sure that all the views and opinions from here, Whananaki, Puketapu, Pakawhai and so on are taken on board well before you get to the recommendation stage.
And I'm aware I've been given a list of about 10 community meetings, I'm not too sure about it this way, Lou, where people are going to go out and start talking to people. But again, I mean, I would have thought you've given up 2 hours or 3 hours of your Sunday. I would have thought if I'm going to come to you as a government representative, or the government is going to come to you with a series of recommendations, you would want to know what's that based on? I mean, we can have a conversation about what we think should happen, but until I can present you with a series of facts around what this looks like and what our recommendations are based on and a way forward, then I don't want to waste your time.
I don't think it's wasting our time.
Well,
what's the target finish date for all of this?
Yeah.
Until the recommendations are out. What's the targeted date?
To final office? To Windsor?
To have the recommendations out to us people that have damages. For the red sticker houses, are you able to rebuild or not? What's the targeted date?
I can't give you a targeted date on when you'll be paid out, but what I can try and do...
Okay, no, just have to knowledge what's going on.
Well, what I've tried to outline is as of the beginning of 5th of April, that's when we will have in front of us the information, because we can't get it any sooner than that, the information on from the insurance companies and the councils around risk rating. And I think with that information we can start making decisions. But I can't give you a date saying, on this date, you will know A, B, C and D.
Yeah, but you must have a plan how you will progress on this process.
Well, we need to see what the data looks like before we can come out and give you an exact date. But we want to do this quickly. We want to do it with transparency, and we've got to make sure we get it right, though, because making wrong decisions has a.
The second question: if you talk about transparency, will the data be publicly available?
I don't see why not. The insurance companies are always reluctant to provide their information, but it's anonymised. I'm assuming the council, but I can't speak on behalf of, because you're Hastings out here. I'm assuming the Hastings District Council will give us information that allows us... Okay, Napier and Hastings, well, you've got your Mayor of Napier here. I'm assuming that they will give us the information as soon as possible, but in a way that is anonymised, because you don't want to go and have a look at what You know, your neighbour, well, I'm assuming you don't want to, go and have a look and see what the risk is for your neighbour. But it will be deep enough to allow us to make a series of recommendations that will provide you with a level of certainty going forward. Like I said, Christchurch took 4 months. Queenstown floods, I think it took 18 months. But we know we need to move quickly, but we also know we need to get it right.
So moving quickly, what do you anticipate that time frame to be? So you're obviously trying to break the 4-month mark. Like,
No, there's no. I mean, I'm just saying that we think that 4 months took too long.
cool. We're 6 weeks in just about now.
Yeah, and like I said, we're only just getting the information that's going to allow us to put together a series of recommendations.
That bit that was talking about was in parallel with the data and the med side of things. What's the mechanics of that? Like, if we have a group in Parkfire and Esk, and we can front up to this in parallel thing that's happening, is it the councils? Is it because there's nothing on the task force that indicates that?
No. So again, I'll work through Lou on this. I expect to front all these, as many meetings as I possibly can on this, with council staff, with recovery staff.
Because it's not just Lou, there's probably a dozen Lou's around Hawke's Bay that the task force needs to be
No, absolutely. No, sorry, I hear you. So what we're looking at doing is establishing key leads, or market mavens, whatever you want to call them, in various communities of interest. Look, if you really want to know what's going on, I'm starting a weekly newsletter. You can Stuart.NashMP at parliament.gov.nz. I can put you on the emailing list for that, and you can get an idea of what's happening in the recovery.
Stuart, your comments are quite encouraging. I'm involved in the horticultural sector, and I've lost orchards just up the road here and in Parkfire, so within 2 ground zeros. Employ a lot of staff, and so your comments are quite encouraging. But I would stress that come May and June and July, and I know that you're working with an industry, that's going to be crunch time with some of the rural sector, particularly horticulture, in terms of getting decisions, in terms of whether you have to lay off staff or not. It's not that we haven't got work, it's when you've lost half of your income, you've got to make critical decisions.
Yeah, no, but point well made.
I'm just going to have to, all of my training in public speaking and all of that stuff, I know that 90 minutes is about as much as somebody can take sitting in a confined space, and it's getting quite hot in here. So I'm just going to, while the minister's still here, I'm just going to quickly, because if you want to work your way up here, Queen, I just want to quickly, while you're here, then you can take off because I know you've got a meeting, is the funding for the grants that are being sorted out at the Chamber of Commerce. I know that there's a lot of people that have applied for grants, and we're 4 weeks down the track and they haven't even been acknowledged yet. And so I'm just wondering, do we know what's going to happen? Because these people are wanting to pay staff. Is anybody here that has tried to get a grant for employment and stuff? Yeah, and have you heard?
The communication seems to be good.
Yep, great.
Emails are good back and forth. And that's where we're at, but
no money. We might have to get the Red Cross involved, do you think? That was a joke.
Okay, look, I don't know if they'll pay anybody. Can anybody tell us if they've actually...
So we allocated $25 million, first tranche, another $25 million, I think that's public. We've said we'll fund that as well because we've run out of money in Hawke's Bay for those that have been approved. It's going through a triage process. I wasn't aware that money actually hadn't gone out the door from the Chamber. I will make a call first thing tomorrow morning and find out where we are actually at with regard to money coming out the door from the Chamber.
I mean, it's, my business has been majorly affected. Right? I mean, a lot of my clients up Eskdale, I mean, I can't feel so sorry for them. Right? But the issues are, we've all got staff, we've all got really big overheads since we had to do what we had to do to keep things going for everybody. But it'd be nice to, instead of them just giving me emails, to actually put a pin on that check.
I hear you.
I will.
Okay, I'll follow it up.
Okay, so we're just going to close off the meeting with Quint Swain, who is one of the Loos in the community, and I'm going to be wanting to be put on the payroll, by the way, if I have to keep doing all this organising. But Quint, would you want to just give us a quick update about Unison, and he doesn't need a mic.
Yeah.
just like we've had at the other meetings that we've had sort of weekly until a couple of weeks ago, but Queensland from Unison used to give us an update where they were at each time, and this is from him. They're still working on some of the lines in our area. The first area is Tate Road, where they're replacing a pole by the bridge that was on yesterday, and they're scheduled to have the power on tomorrow for Tate Road. Second area is Araparanui Road, where they're rebuilding the network, including 20 poles. Having been in this area, we're preparing for work, and 4 teams are going to start there tomorrow for the rebuild. They're going to plan on having that network rebuilt by Friday, the week coming. And shortly after, they'll be going to individual properties where they can to hook them up. If you don't have the power back on your property, you can contact Unison. There are some properties that may have damage to the electrical systems, and what they're doing to help you with cleanup is they'll run a line in and just like one single plug, so you can use power for cleanup. They're happy to do that. And if there's any other questions, you can ask me and I'll get them answered for you by Unison, but they're pretty much getting to the final stages of getting everybody onto power by the sound of it. Now this is for State Highway 5, State Highway 2 and the roads between Napier and Hastings. Pretty much they're looking at having the road between here and Taupo open 24 hours a day by the end of this week. So that's what they're looking at, and they're happy to hear back from feedback from the community if people think that that's not a good idea or not, to have it open for 24 hours with security and stuff like that. So you can give feedback to me if you've got any concerns about that, but that's where they're aiming to be at the moment. The damage outside the Esk substation, where it's still one lane down here, that's taken a little bit of time because they've been talking to regional council about whether they still wanted the culverts in the same place or if things have changed with the silt build up and stuff like that. So that's now been resolved, so that will be happening in the next couple of weeks, getting that part back to 2 lanes. So the large, there's design for the large underslip near Glengarry will be completed and reviewed by Thursday the 30th of March, expecting construction to start the week of April the 3rd. Design is underway for the sites where the river has come close to State Highway 5, north of Beatty Road. There will be temporary measures put in place until the permanent design is completed. All other washout slips are in the design phase and are being expected to retain the same momentum, getting fixed. Contractors have been directed to focus on repairing and clearing drainage and culverts. If these are not repaired or clear in any rain event in the next little while, could cause more damage and slow them down. So State Highway 2, there's significant damage to a stretch of road. Approximately 50 sites have been impacted between Tongoia and Putorino. We've managed to open a section south of Putorino for residents, essential services, e.g. stock trucks, for certain hours of the day. North of Waikato River has full access to Wairoa. The Devil's Elbow section of the road has been severely damaged, and they're not expecting the section to be open to the general public until at least late May. The Waikato River, they've established works for the Bailey Bridge and have commenced and are expected to have that completed mid to late April. There's a bridge, the Waitangi Bridge at Awatoto. They've got overnight closures so they can carry on with the bridge inspection. The design and fixed strengthening of this currently in progress. No time frame for the strengthening work to be completed at this stage, but we anticipate this to be completed by the end of the year. Napier Hastings Expressway, future form and function, e.g. 4-laning, will be looked at a regional level with councils and nationwide. Any decision on this is expected, there's no decision to be expected in the short term, but they are aware of that that what they need, because we're so vulnerable from the north with getting shut down with slips and stuff, that they need to have a really good, sturdy, joint with the south. So that's one thing that they have got in consideration.
Fantastic. Cool, thank you so much. So I just really want to say, gone. I really just want to thank you so much for coming back, because you made a commitment to come back. Stuart, thank you for coming back. I'm thinking it's going to be an interesting time on the rugby field for the first game. I don't know, just thinking. Nicole, thank you so much. It's been so lovely to meet you, and you talk a lot of sense. So thanks everyone for coming out. We're just going to keep, as my saying is, poking the bear. We'll keep poking the bear until we get what we're demanding, because as we know, crime's not going anywhere. It's just getting worse. So, and we're talking about the cyclone recovery here. So we will be in touch. I'll be sending out messages tomorrow on Facebook, so please, if you've got any feedback that you want to give me, please do. I'm from Whirinaki. Thank you.